we're going to get started. This actually came about in June of this year, right in time for Pride. And when it came out initially, we got a glimpse of it at the KW Rainbow Network. And this is actually not the first version, to be honest with you. It was tweaked a little bit and improved. It's just, there were 1 or 2 slides that were taken out that were good to be taken out. So, has anyone ever felt overwhelmed or confused trying to keep up with how to be inclusive? Yes. Okay. Have you struggled with how to take care of your LGBTQ plus clients, vendors, associates? What's the struggle? Common struggles.
Fear of making a mistake.
Say that again.
Fear of making a mistake.
Fear of making a mistake in what way?
So you never want to be the person that accidentally misgenders someone or forgets about something that once you learn about it feels like it should have been obvious to you. You know, and that sometimes can make you stumble or not put yourself out there in the same way because you are trying to figure out how you are supposed to navigate the waters, and ends up doing more harm than good for both parties.
Yeah. Absolutely. I would say the biggest thing that I hear people say is pronouns. They struggle with pronouns. They don't want to hurt someone's feelings. They don't know how to ask. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. Let me also say that this is a safe space here in Zoom too. So we're going to talk about some things that may be a little uncomfortable. We're going to talk about some things that maybe you haven't revealed about yourself before. Excuse me. But it is a safe space, and I'll guide you through the conversation. The last time that we did this, there were tears, there were stories. It was fantastic. So allow yourself to be free in that. Okay, and just give me a couple minutes. I still have a cough drop in my cheek, so it'll be out in a minute. So it's easy to get lost to feel like this isn't relevant to you. Have you heard that before in any type of situation? So, you know, some of the things that you said don't just apply to the LGBTQ plus community, it also applies to the Black community, the Hispanic community, the Asian community, the Arab community, so on and so forth. You feel like you don't know what to say. Excuse me. So you may feel like that this is not relevant to you, but I celebrate each of you for choosing to be learning-based and growing your business, specifically when it comes to the community. So today we're going to learn together and be partners in this journey of understanding. Why do we celebrate Pride? Does everyone know what Pride is? Let me start there. Yes. Why do we celebrate Pride?
Celebrate being who you are.
Absolutely. Celebrate being who you are. Do you know when we celebrate it here? June, yes. It is not always celebrated in June across the country. So keep that in mind. So some of the other responses would be, we got to acknowledge the history and history of discrimination. We celebrate progress, and we create a safe space for people to live authentically as themselves. Because for most of history, the community has been discriminated against. All right. So by the end of this lunch and learn, you're going to learn, excuse me, why we celebrate Pride. We talked about that. Who's in the rainbow? How does this apply to real estate? And what is Keller Williams doing? First thing they're doing is doing this class and hoping that more market centers teach this, because I've not seen that as much as I would like yet. All right, Stonewall. What do you know about it? You heard? It was a riot. It was a riot in a bad way, not like it's a riot, right? Yes.
1969.
Mm-hmm. What did you just say?
I was saying I'm thinking of New York.
Yes. So Stonewall happened in June of 1969 at a gay bar in Greenwich Village. Excuse me. The gay bar was raided by the police. And instead of just acquiescing, the patrons decided to fight back. Okay. They included trans and lesbian protesters, many protesters of color, and it became a point in the fight of LGBTQ plus rights. There was in particular a Black woman who was pivotal in the Stonewall riots, though she says, don't credit me, I was there, but I didn't start it, and a Hispanic woman. So it wasn't necessarily gay white males, it was more people of color, women and trans. So after that, it was followed by several demonstrations in New York, and it was the formation of the Gay Liberation Front, as well as some other organizations. The next year in 1970, they commemorated the uprising of the first annual Christopher Street Day Parade, which we now know as the Pride Parade. Has anyone ever been to a Pride Parade? Anyone been to New York? No? It's on a whole nother level compared to here. It's, yeah, it's wonderful actually. All right, so in addition to celebrating Pride, we can reach out to our sphere of influence for International Day Against Homophobia, Biophobia, and Transphobia, which is on May 17th. June, of course, for Pride Month. What day did we celebrate last week? National Coming Out Day, October 11th. And International Trans Day of Visibility is on March 31st. So you may not want to address all of these, but at the very least, I feel like you can say Happy Pride to some of your clients, okay? Let's look at the timeline of some of the things that have happened in the community. So we already talked about 1970, we're going to skip way forward to 1995, the Defense of Marriage Act. So actually, sorry, 96. So they authorized states that banned same-sex marriage to refuse to recognize same-sex marriages that were performed in other states, and further specified that the US government defined marriage as only between a man and a woman. Excuse me. So I feel like folks got a little scared and nervous and decided to put this into our court and justice system, as we only describe marriage this way. Back then, you could still get a civil union in many states. You could be a domestic partnership, but you could not say that you were married to your partner. In 2003, we have Lawrence v. Texas. That invalidated sodomy laws across the US, which decriminalized homosexuality in every state in the United States territory. In 2009, we have the Matthew Shepard and James Byrd Jr. Hate Crimes Prevention Act. Both of these young men were killed in 1998 due to a hate crime, heinous hate crimes. I think that it's between the two names, you may know of Matthew Shepard the most. Have you heard his name? Great. There are different organizations. I believe his mother still has a 501c3 that's going to raise funds. Excuse me. So that act came, it was signed into law, and the measure expands the 69 federal hate crime law to now include crimes motivated by gender, sexual orientation, gender identity, or disability. So before 2009, federally, if someone was killed or injured or assaulted because of their orientation, it didn't matter. The US government didn't prosecute. As in 2009, they could. Don't Ask, Don't Tell was repealed in 2011. So now in the military, you could live openly, excuse me. And then under this policy, service members were able to come out and be safe about it. Did it go over well in the beginning? Maybe not. But today we know that generally it's not an issue. And that started in 2011. 2015, Obergefell versus Hodges. That was a landmark case where the Supreme Court ruled that state bans on marriage equality were unconstitutional and instituted nationwide marriage equality. I specifically remember that day because I myself was in a civil union and I was like, we can actually get married now, right? There are some states that have passed those laws. but now it became the law of the land in 2015. And then in 2020, we have both Boston and Clayton County, Georgia, that extended protections against employment discrimination to include sexual orientation and gender identity, making it illegal for employers to discriminate against those employees. 2020. That's not that long ago. You could federally discriminate. Do you know what the laws are in Pennsylvania in terms of housing? Protected classes.
Sexuality.
It does. In Pennsylvania, it does include gender orientation and sexual orientation. Federally, you can still discriminate housing for those classes, unfortunately. But in PA, you cannot. So I always like to point it out. All right. Any ahas or questions about the timeline?
I feel like it's a lot of movement and a lot of accomplishments in like a short period of time. Like that first thing we're seeing up there was 1996 and the last thing was 2020, which I was born in 1996, so.
Oh, I feel old. Yeah, it is a short amount of time, you're right. What else? What else?
Just when it started, compared to other equal rights acts, in the 60s, there was a lot passed, and in the 70s, federal was passed. The last couple of decades.
Absolutely. One of the last classes to be protected in an equality sort of fashion, correct? And I mean, 96, it took a long time. These folks been around for centuries. And not until 96 did the government start to step up, right? Okay, this is a very interesting chart here. So, of course, KW is worldwide, so we want to look at the world view as well. We're going to look at the global perspective. And on this side of the chart has protection against discrimination based on sexual orientation. Is there a constitutional protection, a broad protection, employment, limited, or no? There are still 43 countries that have no protections. And then criminalization of same-sex sexual acts between adults. Criminalization up to 8 years imprisonment, 10 years to life, death penalty. Okay. I feel that this is important to the community. When I say community, that is LGBTQ+, because I don't want to keep tripping over my letters sometimes. Sometimes I'll say community and sometimes I'll say it out. Because this tells us where we can travel. Did you ever hear of the Green Book for Black Americans? Right? You've heard of sundown towns? That still exists, by the way. This is kind of the same thing. I have not been to Jamaica because of this. Now, do I know that they still do it? I don't know. But I know that once upon a time, it was, you could die in Jamaica. Okay, so let's look at some of those countries. Death penalty, we got pretty much most of the Middle East, Somalia, Nigeria, Mauritania, and then we've got Myanmar, some Asian countries there. 10 years to life in prison, got a good part of Africa there. Up to 8 years, got some part more of Africa, and right there above, what is that? Oh, I can't see. Right above Iran. And then de facto criminalization means there's not a law on the books, but pretty much you want to be criminalized for it. Then on the other side, when we look at the United States here, they have employment protection, but not a constitutional protection. Because remember I said, constitutional would mean that in housing, the community would be protected, and it is not. Okay. Any thoughts about this map? What do you feel when you look at it? Scary. Yeah. And you've got some more here, Tonga, Solomon Islands. And you've got some Caribbean islands here, Antigua, Dominica, Saint Vincent, Grenada, right? Part of Barbados. Is that surprising to you that these countries still have these laws on the books? Maybe.
Especially in the Middle East, because it's just, you feel like a culture that should have been in the South, like has been around the first place where people were maybe religious on the earth, and they're still trying to figure it out.
True.
I mean, I think, was it yesterday or so? I think India just had a vote to pass laws on when same-sex marriage is needed. You know, I think in the article it mentioned that it didn't get passed, and yet for them it was growth. But I think when you're looking at, for me, it's not very surprising to look at the history of some of these particular countries in Africa or the Middle East. Like, this is something that has been widely discriminated at a higher level than what we've seen in the US. So it does take longer for those things to happen.
Yeah. And to your point, I would say that the religion may be the reason why it's taking so long, right? Religion has a tight hold on folks in certain situations, that their minds cannot open to that possibility. So,
I'm surprised that Iceland is usually a little more.
Iceland?
Liberal than that, but Finland doesn't surprise me, South Africa doesn't surprise me, Mexico surprises me. Libya, I didn't know they were liberal there.
Yeah. It's very interesting that. And I personally want to get to the continent, and I actually do want to go to Nigeria, so I'll be figuring that out, but yeah, this is just one of those things that even if I went by myself, I might feel comfortable. All right, Americans who self-identified in 2021. Take a look at that. Tell me what you think.
It has to do with comfort, it has to do with flaws as well, as far as who is willing to say, hey, this is me, this is who I am.
Yep.
Well, unfortunately, I have to wonder how many from the older generations didn't survive.
True. There's something else I'm thinking of.
Or just when I identify, like, live in the positive because it's the safest way to live, and if you've been doing this since 1946, like, I've been safe for 50 plus years, not telling anybody. Like, I'm gonna make sure I make it another 50.
Right, absolutely.
I'm just gonna say, I mean, because laws weren't passed or started to be into place in 1996, it's the younger generation that feel more comfortable because the laws have been passed and been, you know, a little bit more connected. But yeah, it's wild to see that.
Yeah. I mean, traditionalists, 1946. So can you imagine that your grandfather comes out right now and the possible vitriol or the shock or whatever type of that your grandfather might experience, right? That keeps them in, obviously. But self-identify is the key word here, okay? And what I also see is that every generation it got better because someone saw someone living out and proud and free and okay. And it got higher, yes.
That's the language too, right? We have is better language now. We have better ways to identify for ourselves, and it's like easier for you not just having examples to see, but actually having language to use so that you know, oh, that's the feeling, that's the identification, that's the feel that I didn't realize, and now I have the words for it.
Yes, absolutely.
I think the other thing, we mentioned religion earlier, and if you look at graphs of religion and what people are identifying as, you're actually seeing more people who are less in line with the religions as well. So I think that also, you know, plays a role as well. People are just more comfortable being open.
Yeah. I would say there's been a shift between I'm religious to I'm spiritual.
Yes.
Or I have a relationship with whoever you're,
Yep.
yes. And that makes a difference too. And I would assume that by the time we get to the next generation, it's gonna be off the charts, right? There's still some pushback, right? What kind of pushback have you seen that's still happening? Because we're not out of the woods yet.
We're going the opposite way.
You think we're going the opposite way? How so?
There's over 500 anti-trans legislations happening. It's not safe for trans folks to travel to places like Texas and Florida in particular and other states in the South.
Absolutely. Yes. So I think that's more so because become more comfortable, or trans folks have become more comfortable to come out. And so now there's this pushback against that. That now people are like extra scared. And so now we're gonna put all these laws in place. I personally really want to take my business to Disney World, but also now I want to give my money to Florida. Right? My family was doing a family reunion next year in Florida, and I jumped on the call and I said, why are we giving my money to them? And they changed us up there. So it's those type of things that we can do.
Sometimes I wonder too, if we're going through a period of history that's not unlike the first time we saw people getting sprayed with fire hoses in the, so I think there's just a lot more attention now, to it in a way that might be seeds for some pretty serious change. Just, I think by bringing media attention to this information in the South, it really sort of woke people up, not just for nation, but worldwide, that this can't continue. And I can't help but wonder if that's happening today. Another. And to the chart, my friends with younger kids, it seems like there's a phase for younger kids that I didn't have in my generation, where kids start exploring different pronouns and sexuality. And it's just part of growing up now, and it's just that really seems new to me, because the traditional, the boomers, that could evolve people there who are making it safe for that phase to happen. So we're teaching, we're counseling, we're in real estate.
Right.
So,
Yeah, I agree.
I think that's huge. It's also who your parents are, like how you're growing up. Because I grew up with, my parents are technically, my parents are traditionalists, right? Like my dad would be 80 this year, and that's just how I grew up. So the conversation in the hall are around us, right? I think that goes a long way.
Yeah, and like the young lady in back said, it's the language.
Yep.
Right? My daughter is in 7th grade. Last year, I saw, I go through her phone periodically because that's what I need to do to protect her. Okay. And there were, what's your pronoun in the text messages? What's your pronoun? Do you like her? I saw you with her, blah, 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 blah. She goes to all girls school. They're exploring this very early. That's I feel like they should be able to do. But some people are not nowhere near into that, right? You've seen anyone know Zaya Wade, Dwayne Wade's daughter?
Yeah.
A lot of vitriol against that. The drag queen story time. Seen that?
Yep.
And all of the vitriol against that. So like you said, it is going backwards in some spaces, for sure. For trans folks specifically, I think. The most endangered, I believe, in the community are the Black trans. We've seen it again and again and again, even in this city of murders of Black trans women. So this was very telling though. I self-identifying as a still. All right, homeownership. So let's go into the real estate side. So let's look at homeownership rates in the US. And take a look at the chart. So with each generation, with each demographic here, you can see what their homeownership rate. So here's the general here. LGBT, 49%. Right? Kind of neck and neck with Hispanic, higher than Black. Okay. And the white non-Hispanic has always been the forerunner, although the Latino community is catching up quick. Catching up quick. All right, so homeownership rates are higher. Send out some of these links so you can take a look at some of the more in-depth information. But, why do you think it's higher in the LGBTQ community compared to these two? Why do you think that's higher? There's
You're
no
also-
right or wrong answer.
I think you're also looking at who all's incorporated within communities, right? So when you're looking at the LGBT plus community, you still have I'm not gonna say a large majority, but you still have a lot of people who are maybe a part of the white non-Hispanic community. So you're gonna see that, I know myself within real estate, I have quite a few clients who are part of the LGBT plus community for
Mhm.
multiple reasons. And I've also realized that when I look there, that's typically, we look at luxury, things like that, and we look at dating, like doing with no kids, the ability to afford and purchase. And a lot of that still comes from the white non-Hispanic community.
Yes, intersectionality. Yes, so we don't know how many of these folks are also in these categories as well. So if you just took out one, it might be higher, might be lower, I don't know. But it's an interesting chart to look at. Excuse me. All right, income of buyers and sellers. So the median income for LGBTQ plus community, 93,200. Non-97,000, lesbian, gay, so they took out certain categories, okay? 96,500, and then bisexual, 78,100. You know, there's a spectrum of sexuality, right? So this doesn't even cover all of that, but it's not a bad chart. So in the percentages, most are in the 45 to 75, but followed up by the plus. And if I look at the other percentages, that's not necessarily the same. Right? Just an interesting thing to look at, to think about when you are marketing your services, or you have someone come to you and they're in the community. Don't discriminate. It does you no goodwill to do that, because you have buyers that are able to afford decent sized house or selling a decent sized house. You talked about dinks, double income, no kids. Yeah, that's real. I mean, that's in the straight community as well, but mostly when we talk about that, we talk about the LGBTQ plus community. Of course, more folks are having families, so that starts to erode that away a little bit. But yeah, this is to show you that everybody's money is green, and why not market to the community? So although the community still encounters unquestionable struggles in pursuit of equity, these numbers show how far we've come. Another thing I would say in this that doesn't account for is age, right? Because some of the younger generation, I feel like, are making more money. I used to teach at Rosemont College. I taught juniors and seniors, senior level accounting courses, and the amount of money that they got offered when they graduated, I was very shocked. One of my students started out at like 65-ish. And I remember graduating and being very happy with my $30,000 offer. So even the age can come into play here in terms of community and what people are making. All right, housing non-discrimination laws. So this chart is showing us if the state law prohibits discrimination based on that, if the state interprets existing prohibition on sex discrimination to include orientation or gender identity, state law prohibits, no prohibitions at all. Are we surprised? And most of the South, right? So again, in Pennsylvania, there is a protection in place. So keep that in mind. Any thoughts on the discrimination laws? Has anyone ever seen someone be discriminated for that? When you're representing a client? I represented a couple recently. They are moving from California to here. And I remember submitting an offer and somebody on the other side asking me a question that I found inappropriate. So yes, this does still happen. I also remember with the same couple, because they didn't know the area, going to see a house. They had already expressed to me what they were not looking for, what they were concerned about, because they're concerned about being comfortable in the community. And looking around at this neighborhood and seeing several of these things that I knew they were comfortable with, but toting the line of not steering, right? I can't steer you one way or the other. All I can do is, if you like it, I'm gonna show you pictures. I showed them the neighborhood. We put in an offer, it did not get accepted, and I said, thank goodness. And I told them afterwards, you know, I didn't think the neighborhood was right for you. I couldn't necessarily say that directly, but these are the things that I think about as a person in the community. I think about it automatically as someone that's not in the community. If you are not, you need to think about these things, because you don't want your clients in an unsafe area.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen it with clients where we had something said to myself and clients, and yet I will say that most of my past clients, it was more coming to me and saying, hey, we're selling our house, similar to what we see in the Black community, we're selling our house, but there's certain things that we should probably take down, like, hey, should we take down our flag, should we take down, you know, pictures of us, things like that, when we're going to sell. And we're specifically looking to get out of this neighborhood because we no longer feel safe. Right, especially back in 2020, I had clients who were in Fishtown. They're like, "Hey, with everything that's happening in Fishtown right now, we don't feel it's safe." And this was a interracial lesbian, right? And they moved out to somewhere else in Philadelphia because they felt safer. They knew the area already, so that helped.
Right.
And yet, it was more so a matter of, this is what we're looking for, this is what we're not looking for, versus, you know, sellers or buyers on the other side saying, hey, what's up with your clients?
Yeah. Yeah. But how would you, if you had clients that were in the community that you felt were being discriminated upon in some way, how would you handle that?
Well, so I think it depends on, one, what's happening, what's being said, what's being done. I think it all goes back to the conversation you have with your clients first, figuring out how they feel about certain things, and also the conversations you have with them around what are their goals, what are they looking to actually accomplish. You know, and not sparing them, and yet continuing to consult them on, these are opportunities for you, right? This is what you said you were looking for. This is what's presented in the we're going to go to that. And then when it comes to the other side where discrimination is coming from, it's hard to speak on at times. And yet it's a conversation where I can go and say, hey, you know, if this is what you're looking for, we may or may not have to necessarily either not say anything or and we can make reports, whatever we care to make after the process happens. It's a fine line, and you know, I'm not going to say I know exactly what it's like. Yeah, I can say I think it's kind of similarly again to what we would deal with our community. Like, oh, I really like this house, and yet I don't like or care for what I saw, and because I'm looking to keep here, I can't say anything else.
It's really a shame. But one of their things that they said that they did not feel comfortable with is if there were a lot of flags hanging. It was an automatic indicator.
Absolutely.
Right? And it's a shame but the connotation is that those folks are very traditional, very pro-America, very staunch in their views, and therefore will not look upon them favorably. There was another flag they didn't want to see, but I'm not gonna say what that is, but you probably know what that is.
We have someone on Zoom who had a recent experience.
Oh, yes, please.
Go ahead, Kiara.
Hi guys. So I currently work for Keller Williams out here in California as the director of First Impressions. And there is an agent here who is very deeply into her spiritual journey. I would say heavily religious. And when she came to my house one day, we talked and we were getting to know each other. And basically, ever since she found out that I was bisexual, she just continues to tell me that God is speaking to her through, or speaking to me through her. That's not the right way. that's the evil path. And she just keeps like constantly coming to me, telling me that I need to meet with her. She has books for me to read, all types of stuff. And it's becoming more and more annoying. Um, I told her, I've had people come up to me before with this, and it doesn't always end well. And it's just she continues to kind of push her agenda. So I've been having a lot of those experiences with her per se, particularly. And yeah, that's she. It's shocking that it's still happening, and even in real estate, we deal with different people. So that's my experience.
Thank you for sharing that. Is the person in your office?
Yes, she is. She's an agent that's been there for quite a while. She's actually related to our team leader, so it's a lot.
Oh,
Um,
that's a win.
yeah. So I feel like, talking to her one-on-one is still not, it's not doing anything, because in her mind, she's not seeing that she's doing anything wrong.
And you're a Dofi.
I'm sorry?
You're a Dofi, director of first impression?
Yes.
See right every day. Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah. And we do have a lot of them in the office who are really they're pretty homophobic. And I'm not one to try to tell anybody how they should behave around others, but I do feel like some of it is a little bit extreme, and it's off-putting.
Yeah, I can only imagine, having that in your work environment.
Especially because I live in California. California
Right,
seems
which is
like
typically liberal, right?
exactly. So
Yeah.
it's really shocking. It's really shocking. No one else actually does it except for her, though. So yeah, it's just really, I don't know, it's a lot.
I wish you some luck with that. I don't know what your next step should be. I mean, if it was somebody you just knew, I'd tell you to block them. But you can't do that in the workplace like that. So the only thing I
Exactly.
would say is if you get to a point where you feel unsafe, then you absolutely need to have a conversation with the team leader or OP or broker. And you probably
Yeah.
should do that now,
Yeah, I would say it's
because it's mental abuse in some way.
borderline harassment.
Yeah.
It is harassment.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that.
You're welcome. Thank you guys for letting me share.
Yeah. So it happens everywhere, right?
And I would say it's interesting because I'm looking at this map and, I would say just from the social equity side of things, I remember going into market centers where you would expect things to be a bit more liberal. And it's not. And, team leaders, operating principals will have the same conversation, say, well, we don't see it much in our particular community or in the neighborhoods that we serve, or we don't have anyone in our office that really associates with these communities. And because of that, we actually don't care about bringing this in. So, it doesn't matter where you are, and I'm just going to speak from, again, the social equity side. When I look at the state of Texas, if you look at areas like Dallas or Austin or San Antonio and Houston, it's a very different experience than most may think they're going to get in Texas.
Yeah.
And it's worse in the small communities, which is the complete opposite in somewhere like Oregon. You look at the map and you think Oregon's a place I can feel comfortable.
Mhm.
Yeah, you get there and you realize that's the complete opposite.
Yeah. It's like you have to rely on local knowledge to know.
Yeah.
I will say that I've been out since I was 25, I believe. But even now, I am careful of what I post about because of clients. It shouldn't be that way, but I also deal with a lot of Black clients, and there is a lot of homophobia in the Black community. And so I'm just careful. I don't deny it. I've definitely had people say, if I say, it's date night. Oh, have fun. Is he blah, blah, blah? And sometimes I'll ignore it. And I was like, she is yada, yada, yada. And I'll just answer and keep moving. But it's a really slippery thing to deal with, honestly. So I'm gonna go back to the situation I was in with clients where they did not want to be in a certain area. How would you handle it without steering? They don't know the area, they're gonna be safe. They love this house in this neighborhood that you think is not, because you know the neighborhood, right? How would you handle that?
I encourage them to get to know the neighborhood a little bit. I do visit different times of the day and end of the week, walk around and maybe they try to talk to neighbors.
But they don't live here.
Oh,
These clients specifically, we're not coming here until they have bought the house. So how-
Encourage them to do some research, I mean. Yeah, I mean, there's. Publication, most towns have like a little town newsletter and you can see what kind of events the towns run that like, I feel like. It's not perfect by any means, but encouraging them to, go online and see what they can find out about the community. Will hopefully open their eyes to some of the things that we can't outwardly say.
On top of that, like, I live an hour outside of the city, so like in a lot smaller area, even that has a Facebook group where the residents are on it, like, they post and they comment in this, so you can really see, like, if you're part of that group, just the type of vibe and like
Okay.
helpful to your community, and it's like, some people crack jokes instead of actually helping, some people are not that nice, or, there's a lot of small businesses and stuff like that, so like, you can get a really good snapshot from one of those neighborhood groups if you can get into it, some of them are private, but literally, what types of people live here and what are they posting, what are they commenting, how do we interact with each other, and same thing with like events and newsletters, but yeah, you can literally see the consumer like in action where we live.
It's a great idea, because I'm a part of the mainline parent community, and there are people who say, I live in Minneapolis and I'm about to move to the area, so they are scouting the group already. And even I was surprised when one day someone said, I want to start a thread of Black-owned businesses. It's like, really? Mainline, okay. But it was telling.
And then you
So,
can see the types of comments that are like on that sort of post.
Right.
And, what
absolutely,
the feedback is.
absolutely.
People tell them themselves.
Yeah.
Right. Let your hand up.
Oh, yeah, I was gonna say the neighborhood groups is usually what I suggest, and then, I think it's perfectly fine, if clients ask me where I go, where I spend my time. And I tell them, here's where I go, here's where I hang out, with my friends. I think that's a pretty good indicator without actually steering. I also like, encourage clients to look up, stats, especially if it's queer people of color. Like, I think that's important to know as well, it's another added layer. Someone who is a queer person of color might not feel comfortable in fish town, right? And might not know those like little details if you're coming from a different state. And so I think it's important that clients research those stats. Sometimes it's school districts and the breakdown of income, of race, of whatever. But there aren't really too many stats yet for like trans families, trans minds.
Right.
And so they're really relying on their realtor, on their agent who lives in that area. And so I usually talk about places I go, businesses that I frequent, where I feel safe. And, of course, I can disclose what kind of identities that I have and see if that lines up with them. And encourage them to do their own research and make sure it's up. But I think it's so important that is like, this is what we're seeing now. It's like, people want to have that added layer of someone that they can identify with through this process of relocating.
Yes.
Because you can't, like, if I was straight and, I guess it doesn't really matter. If I was a queer person moving to Philadelphia from another state that had no idea that I was never from here, I wouldn't want to be working with a straight agent. I just wouldn't. I wouldn't want to. I wouldn't trust their opinion or their judgment about where people go, where people hang out, this and that, unless they were like, I just think that it's a different layer of identity that some folks just can't understand. And things are different now. Things are different in 2023 than they were even just 3 years ago in 2020. And a lot has changed locally, nationally, globally, like a lot is going on in the world. I think that it's a very fine line to toe, as you said, really, and like you can't steer, but you also have to like educate your clients, and it's still your responsibility to kind of look out for them in that way. So it's hard, but like, I think it is gonna be something that's more and more important as we see queer migration across the whole country, which is a huge issue right now.
I would say that I got this help from Rainbow Network. They wanted someone to identify with them. So yes, I think that happens more and more. I will say that I did have a separate conversation, not I saw a house and by the way, but a separate conversation about, oh, there's Margaret has a pride and media does this, and without saying that's where you should move,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
I know I lived in Waco, Texas for a while, which is not exactly the most liberal place in the world. And
No.
yet, so
The first thing I think of when someone says Waco
it's not Waco, that's outside of Waco. It's
is
not
David
actually-
Rich. I just want to say.
It's not actually Waco.
Okay.
No, and where I was going with that is, you know, there's a realtor there, it's like Roman Novian. Roman Novian probably does, this is no joke, 98% of the business for anyone within the LGBT plus community. Everyone knows if you're moving to the Waco neighborhood, anywhere near Waco, you reach out to Roman. And Roman travels, he'll be in Atlanta, he'll be in Cali, he'll be in Florida, he'll go everywhere. So people know who he is, and it's right back to what he said, Mom, it's the fact that Roman already knows where to go, right? Roman already knows like what he does, and he was from out of state and he was visiting Waco. Where would he go to have a good time? Where would he go? He's able to have those conversations that other people aren't necessarily able to have.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very important topic there. One, why it's also good for us to be working with other people as well, right? And working with and partnering with people in other communities so we can learn from them.
Yeah, I think that's very valuable
Yeah.
that he does that. And I also want to say, this is not to say you should shy away from working with clients in the community. You should not. You should learn, right? But it is happening more and more that they're looking for close to relate to. Okay.
So, let's see that.
Great. All right, discrimination in London. So I showed this before and someone's like, well, how would they know? I don't understand how this could happen. How do you think this could happen? Names on application?
Gender workers.
So if they see two last names, the same last name with two women or two men or hyphenated, yes, absolutely. If I call the lender and I just disclose it, yeah, me and my partner are looking for blah, blah, blah. Discrimination there, right? So it does happen. So the approval rates for same-sex couples was 3 to 8% lower than heterosexual couples. 73% more likely to get denied and paid more in fees and interest. It's real numbers. All right, sexual orientation of NAR members. This again is self-disclosure, okay? So it says 3% are gay or lesbian, 1% bisexual. I believe that number's higher, personally. But yeah, prefer to self-describe and prefer not to say 6%. I would gather this is lower, and it's spread out a little bit. Net personal income for real estate. This is also a very interesting slide. This is talking about realtors. So realtors that are heterosexual versus realtors that are LGBTQ+. What do you think when you see that?
I think realtors in the community are, they're businesses, which makes sense.
They're getting the business in the community.
They're getting something that they're supposed to get, like, that is out there, and that other realtors might not feel comfortable having, or don't know how to approach, that they have approached.
I think looking at this overall, you're seeing realtors within the community are likely, on average, making more.
Making more.
It could be from, again, just being.
But these three,
Exactly.
making more. Because remember, we said back here, their median income tends to be pretty good, right? Homeownership rates are increasing. So yeah, if the realtors that are in the community are working mostly in the community, then that would make sense, that their income would be higher. Anything else? There are a lot of, LGBTQ plus families out there, but there's still a lot that are not. And as a mother, a single mom of three, I can't go out at night to show homes, right? But for someone who's not a parent, if there's a lot of people in the community that are not parents and they have more time to devote to clients and devote to business, so they may not have the distraction of children. I say distraction and love, but they are distracted.
Yeah, yes.
Same. Okay. So yeah, I just found it interesting, and also interestingly enough, KW did not give us any notes on this slide, so we're just like winging it. But I just like to talk about it because it was an interesting topic. Had this discussion last time. The KW Rainbow Network. Does anybody else belong to that besides me? Wonderful, wonderful. So there's like $1 billion in referral income in this network.
It's the top producing referral network in all of Keller Williams, what I learned in August.
Yeah. Which is why we had our own bold session that just ended recently, but it was virtual. That was awesome. And I really feel like, were you in the bold?
I wasn't in Rainbow Gold.
Were you in the bold? Okay. So I really feel like, what that did is it allowed people to be more open in the bold situation, be more relaxed, not have to feel like they have to identify in some way. So there were, it was a little under 200 participants today. And I think when we last logged off, the numbers weren't in, but I think we were like number 1 or 2 in the bold transactions list. So that was fantastic. But the Rainbow Network has been around for a while. I remember going to New Orleans in 2008, 9, I think, when we were there for Family Union, and going to my first Rainbow Network hackathon. And there were like just a handful of us. And now the Rainbow Network actually has events at Family Union before. They have Rainbow Camp, that's before Mega Camp. And there are some agents who only go to Rainbow Camp because that's where they feel comfortable. And then there's usually a couple of panels at Family Reunion. So it is a very big, welcoming group of people. Now, they have their own issues just like all the other groups. We're currently trying to diversify more because the group feels very centric to one particular demographic, but hopefully that's changing soon. But it's a great network and part of the DEI forward. Let's see. All right, any ahas? Or just anything in general that you want to talk about, bring up, comment, question?
Well, I'll just share this. I think it's important for, whether you're part of the community or not, especially if people are supportive or allied in the community, to ensure that information is out there, right? So not from a strictly business standpoint, yeah, it will assist, right? Like for like with Bridge and Andrew, like with that, once people realize, oh, you're inclusive, I can work with you, then there were random calls from everywhere, right? And that increased my business with social equity, when people realize that, hey, I'm either a part of the community or I understand the community, I understand how to converse with you, I understand like what you may be dealing with. I'm not going to judge you throughout the process. When people understand that, they feel as though they can trust you more, you're authentic with it, and you realize, I'm like, okay, you're not just doing this to get my money. That goes a long way moving forward. So
Building a relationship.
yeah, building relationships.
Yeah.
But people aren't going to come to you unless they know, hey, you're somebody I can actually trust. You're somebody that I know I can feel safe.
So how can you demonstrate that as an ally? That people will know that you're safe to contact. Because I'm telling you that people are doing a deep dive on your Facebook profiles and Instagram.
Yep.
to see what's going on before they pick up that phone. Even if their agent buddy told them to call you, they're still looking. So what can you do as an ally?
You can add your pronouns, even if, you know, I'm she, her, he, him, whatever, you always call them that, and it's not something that you have a challenge with. You can just put those up there. I can't join the rainbow. I don't know if you can join the rainbow as an ally.
You can,
Yeah, join the rainbow network as an ally.
you can join any of the DEI communities, but whether you are, I could join,
There's 13 affinity groups.
yeah, you can join any of them.
Put it in your.
What else?
You know, like post on all the work days, post in June, respect other people's pronouns, or don't make assumptions. That was my comment. It's like, don't make assumptions with the first interaction about what the program is gonna be.
Right, because I could present looking like I would be she, her, and I could say I'm they, them,
Yeah,
right?
you don't know at that first interaction. So
Mhm.
just being careful around it.
Okay.
I think if allies are only posting on certain days and holidays, it can come off performative. And so I think there's a fine line to show with that, like, if it's not gonna line up with how you run your business, how you do your consults, and what you include in your marketing as far as photos and material go, like, it's gonna be picked up on right away. And it's not just like you have to change your language, you can't say husband or wife, you can't, you know, you have to watch your gender language. That has to be visible in your, you know, materials that you give to clients. You know, if you go to someone's website, you should be able to see inclusive photos of people, not always of the same, you know, I don't know, photos that people use for free, I don't know where they get them, but
Stock photos.
it's not photos, yeah, so like, I feel like that needs to be, a lot of people don't think about that. And how their website is like, and I think if you're only posting those certain things, you can come up as performative. And so I think if you're gonna overhaul the whole thing, then you gotta go all the way in like every aspect of your business.
I agree. I saw an ad recently. It was real estate related, but I can't remember precisely what it was. And the family was interracial. And my first thought was like, they feel that on purpose. But I didn't feel like it was genuine in using that. Not, there are interracial families, yes, but I feel like more companies are promoting solely that because they want to fit in the realm of being politically correct. So yeah, I agree. And I would say that AW has done a good job with the stock photos that they put up recently. I've been able to change some things out. Yeah. What else?
And I'll just say on that, from that standpoint, I think also some people, when it comes to marketing, they're still worried about how they can be perceived. Just like you said, you saw the ad, and the first thing he said was, "Hey, I don't know how genuine this is." So I think that's something that a lot of people still struggle with. They're dealing with, like, what are things going to look like if I market this way? And I would say just within just period, I think also people are still worried about whether or not they're going to either offend certain people within other communities, or if their business base is one way right now, how much business they're going to potentially lose from that. So marketing wise, I think a lot of people still struggle with it.
If you're struggling with pronouns, my suggestion would be to say, when you introduce yourself, I go by she, her. What are your preferred pronouns? But that's at least entry level basic. If that's a struggle for you. I would also say that I think that, like we talked about before, that the trans community is the most discriminated against in the community as a whole. So if you get a client who is trans and it makes you uncomfortable for some reason, you need to exit that because they don't need that energy.
I came into this late night. I do a lot of work with Monica and Jen. And of course, our job is just to provide good services to everyone that hires us. And Monica noticed that I posted a lot of photos over the years, not even thinking about these issues because I didn't think about it. With the last photo, I haven't posted yet, because I assumed I think I'm still on your list. And I think, you know, it just sort of showed just genuine good service to people. And I did make a mistake, I think, that people Monica corrected me. And pulled me aside afterwards to talk. And I didn't understand at the time, I do now. It was, someone that was transgender. The thing, I mean, you know, I have 2 to 3 hours to gain people's trust. And I, to be honest with you, I just like working with people, working hard for people. I think that the two agencies that don't get down from John and I have that. We're just here to support you. But not to really take it, just look at the social media, Facebook, or anything like that. Recently, I haven't posted much, because of personal things going on, so it's just social and stuff I'm working. I want to just want to say that, you know, it's a learning experience for guys like myself. It's just genuinely care about people in general.
Thank you for sharing it.
You know, so.
Yeah.
That's much it. We just like to do a good job, for everybody that hires us. We've got all kinds of people, they're all over the world, no one is, relationships, to be honest, it's kind of. And I can tell you, my agent clients just really just embrace us and we embrace them, especially at the end, it's so happy. Because we show them that we're genuinely the service that we provide, and that we care about people.
If only everyone did that.
Yeah, well, we try, you know, I mean, I think it really comes down to is what's in your heart, you know, what is in your heart. So, it's gonna be different for everyone. So, I'm very grateful to be here, and I'm happy to work with Monica for ever since you got it. How many years?
I mean, you're 6 now.
6, okay, 6. Was the champ team. So, thanks for the opportunity to be here, to be able to be able to talk with us.
Thank you. Who do you represent? I can't see your,
Joe and I, Joe Lockton, and Dan Lockton, we have our own company, we're the US Suspect.
okay,
Then we went to House Check, which is another national company that just, it forwarded.
House
Check,
house check, okay,
they're out of Boise, Idaho.
okay,
And we took an opportunity, him and I, and my brother, we did go there. And it's on the way to becoming, but then COVID really did put a kibosh on that. So,
Okay.
I'm sorry, I said it didn't work out, so we decided to never work for corporate again. And go off on our own, so cover the entire city of Philadelphia. I'm from Philly, Temple. From the back of the so we'll glad to this.
thank you.
Thanks.
I was just gonna say that, I mean, everyone's moving like the most part, like it's like, we know each other, so it's like, this is like, going on for years, but, it is so important. So I'm very, very protective of my clients, and I'm sure a lot of people that listen to them, and as someone who is queer, not talking trans mass, like, I will not just connect my clients to someone or a company that I do not trust, that I do not know, or that like I do not think that they will be safe with. So it's like, yeah, I'm very, very selective of who I connect my clients with. And like, it's any client, but that's, you know, someone who has good experience, but it is important because when you are in the queer community, you do have to wonder like, oh, you know, mom recommends this HVAC company. Am I gonna feel safe with them entering my home? You know, who is this person? It's not just you as a builder, it's not just a lender. You need to have a whole network of people that you're connecting your clients to who are in the community that they're gonna feel safe with, because like literally their physical safety is important. It's not just like verbal and you know, it's physical as well. And so I think, you know, going off what you're saying too, like posting stuff, if you're going to just like post things, you have to go the full way. It's not just inclusive marketing, it's who you're connecting your clients to and who you're interacting with on a daily basis. And I've had to, you know, I've had talks over the years, Dan, you and I have talked, and pronouns are an issue, you know, it can be difficult to understand, but, and there's a learning curve, but I think that overall, like, you just have to be very, like, selective, and for me, I vet everyone for it. I'm not just like, you know, introducing to so-and-so, like, I wanna make sure that my people are gonna feel good with whoever I connect on with, because I want their experience to not only be, top tier, but it's also a reflection on me and my own business. And so I think it's just a whole bigger picture and how it does funnel down to you as an agent. Thank you.
I was gonna say, I had her on, a while back, and Kate Tang, and she had, that was my first time hearing her story, and but she hasn't. Sorry.
No, pronouns, they.
Oh, they. And I'm sorry. And I had shared it with someone who did it, and they opened up about like going out with other friends that are in their community, how they were treated, and the mental abuse that they take in from time. No one deserves that. No one deserves to talk down to or someone trying to break their soul. In any sort of way. Then also once you box up that educated person, one day business, okay with they point. But they gotta deal with their ignorance and blatant harassment. I don't know why y'all don't do some people, because they deserve the public deserve to know how you're being treated and what you're doing as a company. So they're not gonna get my company and I find out who my back. I don't care if I like that or not. I'm not using who you are as a person. Your character will go far beyond the knowledge that you need individual. I'd rather somebody new learning business that when you treat people right, then you being an expert for the way you treat somebody, you're breaking someone's soul. That's just never.
Thank you for that, and I will add that it also goes into your office environment, like we heard the person on the phone say, like, hold your market center accountable. If you don't see enough marketing that is inclusive, you need to speak up. I've spoken up at my office when I've seen a panel and I was like, this ain't it. I have no problem speaking up. At least go to someone who doesn't have a problem speaking up, but you gotta hold everyone accountable to make it a great environment. Let me get our first.
I related to what Mom said. I've been lucky to have time now to really build my team, vendors and whatnot. And I think very carefully about what I asked them before I put them on my list of contacts. But I didn't think about what I'd say when people started questioning me and like asking questions. So I got the question from an agent at Mega Camp this year who had a client who's moving to Philadelphia, and I remember just like, that's a lot of questions, and then very slowly I got the question, how do you feel about gay people? Knowing that made me wonder about his comfort level, but really he was just going for it. He wanted to make sure his client had the right person. And I just realized I didn't figure out, think in advance how to answer that question. I looked up the scripts, and the scripts are as diverse as I would like them to be. So I was modifying, making my own. I think I said enough, Dan, but I got the business.
I mean, I think in that situation, you have to speak from your heart and you as an individual, and then let that person determine if you're going to consider or not.
Yeah, I probably wasn't a very PC answer, but I said my wife and I are okay with them.
Like that.
Yeah.
Well, I would just say this, as far as, checking your market center environment for anybody. Also, if you don't necessarily feel comfortable going to leadership, remember that there are literally national groups, right? So we do have DEI heads, and we do have social equity task force. And we still get calls. Like, we still get calls all the time from people all over the country saying, hey, this just happened at my market center. What should I do? Or can you have a conversation with our leadership? Right? Like, I can tell you within the last week, the number of phone calls and emails I got with everything that's happening right now between Israel and Palestine, my phone has been blowing up with my market center's doing this, or my market center's not doing this, or this was said, or for instance, the KW post that went out that said, we stand for Israel. Like, call after call after call after call like that. So we realize that we're still around within the social equity task force, within the DEI at a national level. We still accept calls, and we're still willing to have these conversations on your behalf with the market centers.
And regionally, there's still
and regionally as well. Yes, regionally as well.
Anybody else? Share? No? Thank you all for coming.